Hello, this is Juniper of Solavie Studio, and welcome to my backyard. Last week, I believe it was, in the 13 moon calendar, on the bottom portion of the page, and I know Valerie Love spoke of this quote too, but it really struck me as the art dimension employs humans as mediums to evolve consciousness to ever higher stages. And I don't know, as an artist, that really struck me as am I evolving consciousness. And then, I don't know, through this whole moment of contemplation, it reminded me of this fabric. This is fabric that I wove, and there's no, I set up the loom in a particular way, but there's some repeating patterns, but there's not, like, overall it's pretty random. Like, I really like that pattern. I mostly tried to stay with diamonds, but it's not ever in the same rhythm throughout the whole piece. It shifts and changes. So the black is cotton, and the purple is linen, which when I wove it, it was white, and then I dyed it. And this is a custom dye blend of fiber reactive dyes for cellulose fibers. When I was weaving this, that's when the Tibetan monks were in the art gallery downstairs from where I was weaving, because it was a big table loom and we weren't allowed to take them home. And it was my week. You had to sign up for weeks, so for your final project, so that everyone had enough time to, because there weren't enough looms for every student to have their own. So there's a lot of shared, Anyways, when I was weaving this, and it is 7 or 8 feet long, it shrank, the cotton shrank in width when I washed it. The linen didn't really shrink as much, but it was 36 inches wide, and now it's not. But anyways, it took a long time to weave because it was a lot of like throwing the shuttle and throwing the shuttle. The yarn isn't very thick, so it took a long time. But while I was weaving it, the monks were downstairs doing a sand mandala in the art gallery downstairs. And they were chanting and praying and everything, and I was upstairs weaving. And weaving this, it did make me look at patterns differently, because I had threaded the loom in one way, and I wasn't sure what that combination would do. It was kind of a guess. You can thread a loom in so many different ways, and depending on how things line up, and then which you raise, and how many you raise at a time, and this and that, affects the pattern. So I was playing around a lot with that, and there is just a rhythm to it. And you throw the shuttle, you beat it, you lift it, you change the petals, you throw the shuttle, you beat it, you lift the petals, or you reset the petals. So there's this like sound, the click and that happens, and it's quite beautiful. So every year in my town, there's I guess I should start with the art walk. So on the first Friday of every month in my town, there's a couple art galleries downtown. There's many restaurants or places to eat that display artwork on their walls. There's sometimes, even if artists have studio spaces, and I know there's a few particular buildings downtown where you can rent a small studio space for a few $100s a month. And so the artists will open their doors for art walk. and anyone in the community can come and look at artwork and talk to each other and everything. So every October, the local art shop, the privately owned art shop, they do a fundraiser where local artists come in and they're given a free 6x6 canvas, 6 inches by 6 inches. And you can do whatever you want to it with whatever medium. You can paint, you can draw, you can glue stuff to it, you can whatever you want. And then you turn it in and they get sold for $25 a piece. The first time they're shown is on the Art Walk night, which the first Friday of November will be November 2nd, next Friday. And so during next week, I think they said they had 312 canvases distributed this year. And so they're trickling in, and they will be put up next week in the gallery, all 312 pieces from local artists. And at 6 o'clock, I was talking to the people who work at the art shop, and at 6 o'clock next Friday, it's a madhouse at the gallery, because whoever first grabs a sticker next to the artwork that they like gets to take that piece home at the end of November, because they remain up. So I was turning my 6x6 inch in yesterday. Unfortunately, I forgot to take a picture of it, but I'll go and take a picture while it's displayed in the gallery. But it was just interesting to have the feedback. Like, they really liked my painting. And I know that they do give compliments to everyone, but there's my bad habit. Anyways. But they were talking about my shading and my this and my that, and it is a bit challenging to do on such a small scale. But we started having a conversation about Celtic knots. And I first fell in love with Celtic knots when I was studying for my first practicum. So my first bit of being a student teacher. And I was in a 6th grade class. They were studying medieval times. And I was asked to teach the class calligraphy. So I had observed the class once, I'd met the teacher twice, and then all of a sudden the first day I'm supposed to teach them how to do calligraphy. Well, I didn't know how to do it myself. So there was that. In the whole process of teaching myself how to do calligraphy and researching medieval times, I came across illuminated manuscripts. And they're beautiful and fascinating. And in the illuminated manuscripts, especially the ones from like England and more northern Europe, there's a lot of Celtic knots. It's more Nordic. But what I love about illuminated manuscripts is mostly they were religious texts that were decorated. But sometimes the person decorating the page, they would do basically comic strips around their artwork, or they'd make fun of certain things, or it's hilarious actually. So you have this very solemn religious text, usually written in Latin, and then you have these like wisecracks on the side through the visual arts that were just totally challenging what the text was saying. It's actually quite funny. And that got me thinking about art history, because I did briefly get introduced to illuminated manuscripts in art history. In college, I had to take, 5, 6, 7 classes on art history, being an art major. And you go from the beginning of time, for cave paintings and things like that, all the way through to modern day. and all the different styles. And it's interesting to see human evolution through the lens of art. And so that's why this quote struck me so much. I'll read it again. Art dimension employs humans as mediums to evolve consciousness to even higher stages. So, studying art history, and also when I was in college, I would do things to poke at people. There was one project in a three-dimensional art where that's when the Brillo pads, oh, sorry. My brain just split into two. That's when they were trying to clone the sheep in England. And I just thought that was an abomination. I mean, I just, like, why? But that was when the sheep survived. That was like the first cloning success of an actual animal happened. I don't think the sheep lived all that long, but so I made this monstrous looking thing, but it was pretty. And I was just cracking up the whole time. And I wish I had taken a picture of the title. It might be in one of my things somewhere, but I know I have thrown away that horrible monstrosity since then. Anyways, I had found at the hardware store a box of maroon Brillo pads, like those scrubby things you use for your dishes. And I bought in a few boxes of those and took some copper wire and sewed them together like Frankenstein style. And made this really weird, like, it looked kind of like a heart. Like, not a heart, but like the organ, like if you take a heart out of a human, and like with big valves and stuff coming off. And then I made a wire armature with some muslin and Mod Podged it so it looked shiny. And it looked like it was hatching from this egg, and then I put membrane on it. I put pig intestines on it as like like the inside of an eggshell, that membrane that it has. And what did I title it? The Next Generation or something like that. But it alluded to cloning, but people were really curious about it, so we had to put it up in the student gallery for our critique. And so we set up in there, not in the classroom, because the classroom had too many but anyways, the student gallery had like pedestals and things so you can set up your pieces. And so I put it up there, and people kept on going over to it and like really curious about it because it was pretty, like the lines, the colors, everything was pretty. But then they'd read the title and the look on their faces, they were horrified. They're like, oh. So it was the funniest thing, but that's what art does. And so I'm very excited because I haven't been to the art walk in a long time, but I'm very excited to see. I want to be there at 6 o'clock on Friday, if my daughter's schedule permits. Anyways, to go to the art walk just to see what other people did with that 6x6 piece. And one of the other things that I've been finding really interesting is a year ago I started Instagram for Inktober. I hadn't been on Instagram before. So for me, I use Instagram as an art platform, and most of the people I follow on there are artists. And it's lovely to be able to see what other people are doing. And I follow people from all over the world, people from many, many, many different countries. And a lot of times they'll post their artwork, but I can't read what they wrote because it's not in English. But also, that's also fascinating of how it's a global platform for art. And especially with Inktober in a global platform, of having that be so varied. I mean, yes, it's supposed to be black and white, but a word like, oh, what was that word? Expensive. To see how people draw the word expensive is fascinating. And that's a reflection of our consciousness. And maybe looking at those things, it's a way to expand your consciousness. So being given a blank canvas and a size that people generally don't use. I mean, 6x6, it's hard even to find a sketchbook that is that small. It's uncommon. It's not hard. I can find it, but most people prefer to have more of a standard sheet of paper to draw on, just because it's so small and detailed and focused. So when you have infinite possibilities, it'll be interesting to see what and maybe people did too, but what other members of my community created on this blank little canvas in which anything is possible. So, I don't know, just as an idea, and maybe even as... But look at creativity in your life, in your community, on a social platform. Hashtag Inktober 2018 if you're interested and if you have Instagram. And see what's going on out there. See how the human consciousness is evolving. And maybe in your own life, even if you don't consider yourself an artist, in art school and drawing class, we would have 30-second sketches of a still life. But you can just take, 1 minute, because really, even if you're one of the best artists, in 30 seconds you can't do a lot. It's rough. And if you see really refined artists who are painting, the first layer on a painting is rough. That's just when you're trying to lay out the space. So what is going on in human consciousness? Look at the artists, because through my art history classes, you can see how artists responded to political or the powers that be through their representations, their visual representations. And it's interesting to continually see it evolve, because if you look at the 50s and the 60s with the beatniks and it's just fascinating when it's like, well, why do we have to paint people? Why do we have to paint anything? What about just shape? What about paint splatters? So it's always, the artists are always just challenging how you think about things. So how can you challenge yourself in looking at art or exploring art on your own to challenge yourself into a different way of thinking? Okay, blessings on your day.